Hello everyone, welcome to the Microsoft Azure Networking video series, where we will have short theoretical information and mostly demos. In this first video, I will try to explain to you about the Microsoft Azure Virtual Networks. My name is Önder Deyar. I'm a Microsoft Azure MVP and I work as a Microsoft Azure Solution Architect. An Azure Virtual Network is a representation of your own network in the cloud. It's a logical isolation of the Azure cloud dedicated to your Azure subscription. You can use virtual networks to provision and manage virtual private networks in Azure. Optionally, link the virtual networks with other virtual networks in Azure or with your on-premises IT infrastructure to create hybrid or cross-premises solutions. Each virtual network you create has its own CIDR block and can be linked to other virtual networks and on-premises networks if the CIDR blocks do not overlap. You also have control of the DNS server settings for virtual networks and segmentation of the virtual networks into subnets. You can use virtual networks to create a dedicated private cloud-only virtual network. Sometimes you don't require a cross-premises configuration for your solution. When you create a virtual network, your services and the virtual machines within your virtual network can communicate directly and securely with each other in the cloud. You can still configure endpoint connection for the virtual machines and services that require internet communication as part of your solution. You can build traditional site-to-site VPNs to securely scale your data center capacity. Site-to-site VPNs use IPsec to provide a secure connection between your corporate VPN gateway and Azure. Virtual networks give you the flexibility to support a range of hybrid cloud scenarios. You can securely connect cloud-based application to any type of on-premises system such as mainframes and Unix systems. A virtual network can be segmented into one or more subnets. Subnets provide logical divisions within your network. Subnets can help improve security, increase performance, and make it easier to manage the network. Each subnet contains a range of IP addresses that fall within the virtual network address space. Each subnet must have a unique address range specified in the CIDR format. The address range cannot overlap with other subnets in the virtual network in the same subscription. I think that's enough for the theoretical information. Let's deploy the Azure Virtual Network. I'll deploy Vnets in the 4 different ways by using Azure Portal, Azure Powershell, Azure CLI, and ARM templates. The result will be the same in all deployments, but I want to show you different deployment types. First of all, I want to show you the Vnet deployment using Azure Portal. You need an Azure subscription to be able to do this example with me. If you don't have an Azure subscription, you can get it now for free. To create a Vnet using Azure Portal, I click the All Service section on the left top on the screen. Here I go to Network section and click the Virtual Network section. I have some Vnets that I created before. I click the Add button to create a new Vnet. You may have more than one subscription depending on your Azure tenant. You must choose which subscription you want to deploy Vnet to. To subscription, I will use the Microsoft Azure sponsorship. Then we need to deploy a Vnet in a resource group. For this, you can select an existing resource group. If you don't have a resource group, you can create a new resource group by pressing a Create New button. So let's create a new resource group and let's say Demo RG as a name. Then we need to set a name for our Vnet and select the region where it will be deployed. So I enter Demo Vnet as the name and I choose this region because North Europe region is close to where I live. So let's click Next. Now we need to set IP address range and subnets for Vnet. If you are deploying a Vnet for your production environments, you should plan your IP range and subnet well. In this deployment example, I set 10.0.0.0/16 IP range. The range /16 will allow me to use approximately 65,000 IPs. Accordingly, I create as many subnet as I want. As an example, I will create DMZ subnet and I will create app subnet and I will set 10.0.1.0/24 and I will create DB subnet. /24. I leave the security settings section as default for now because I will touch on this section in the future videos. The tag section is important for keeping track for Azure resource you create later. If you wish, you can enter a tag name and a value for your resource in this section. For example, you can give created by tag and you can set a value for this tag. Finally, if you don't have any issue in the summary section, you can start the deployment of your Vnet by pressing the create button. With a few seconds, Vnet will be deployed and ready for use. Yep, it's deployed. Let's go check to Vnet. As you can see, our Vnet is ready. You can see our address space and you can see our subnets. So we have deployed virtual network using Azure Portal. Now let's deploy the virtual network with Azure PowerShell and Azure CLI. To use these methods, you can install Azure CLI on your local machine or you can install AZ module for PowerShell. However, I will make the deployments via Cloud Shell. Azure Cloud Shell is a browser-accessible shell for managing Azure resources. For this, I press the Cloud Shell button on the Azure Portal screen. And I'm going to PowerShell section. First, I will create a resource group. You can also use an existing resource group if you wish. So I'm gonna use AZ resource group and the name demo RG02 and the location North Europe. Now I can define the virtual network. So let's create a virtual network and I'm gonna use new AZ virtual network and the resource group name is demo RG02. Location will be the same. North Europe. And the name demo 02 Vnet and the address prefix will be the 20.0.0.0/16. Now I can create my subnet. Subnet config and add AZ virtual network subnet config, and the name will be internal, and the address prefix will be 20.0.1.0/24, and the virtual network will be my virtual network. Finally, I can associate my subnet to the Vnet. I will use my virtual network, and I'm gonna use set AZ virtual network. Okay, looks like done. Let's check. Yep, I have one resource group in here. And in the resource group I have a new Vnet. And my Vnet's IP address range is 20.0.0.0/16. And I have one subnet. The name is internal. And the IP address range is 20.0.1.0/24. Okay, we deploy with the Powershell. Now we can deploy with Azure Cli. So I'm gonna create firstly resource group, and the name will be demo test RG, and the location will be North Europe. Now I can create a virtual network. I will use AZ network Vnet create, and the Vnet name will be test Vnet, and the resource group will be demo test resource group. Location will be North Europe. Address prefix will be 30.0.0.0/16, and subnet name will be internal, and subnet prefix will be 30.0.1.0/24. Okay, it's look like ready. Maybe it can take a time little bit for seeing in Azure portal. Our resource group is ready now. When you go to your resource group, you can see your Vnet, and address space is 30.0.0.0/16, and when you click to subnet, you can see your internal subnet, and the IP address range is 30.0.1.0/24. Now we have deployed the Vnet with Azure Powershell and Azure Cli. Finally, I will deploy virtual network using Json. I've prepared Json for this, so you can find dozens of examples on the internet for deployment of Vnet or other Azure resources with ARM templates. Now let's review my example together. So in Json I firstly determined the parameters. So these parameters contain the information of my Vnet, as you can see, and some define my subnet. This is my Vnet IP address range, and this is my subnet information. Then in a resource section, as you can see, in resource section, I define my resources and stated their, creation. So I have a JSON, and I want to deploy this JSON to my Azure environment. So you can deploy to ARM templates, I mean the JSONs you prepare using the PowerShell, or you can deploy over Azure Portal, or you can deploy with Azure DevOps. But I'm gonna use the Azure Portal, so to deploy with the Azure Portal, you need to go to deploy a custom template section, and then you need to select build your own template in the editor. You can copy and paste your JSON code to this area, or if you have already a file, you can upload the file. So I have Vnet file, Vnet JSON file, and then you can click the save button. When you click the save button, open a visual interface where you can change the parameters. So you can now create a new resource group in here, or you can use the existing one. So let's create a new resource group, and let's say demo RG04. You can change the parameters if you want. If you don't want, agree the condition and click the purchase. Let's try to create again demo RG04. Yep. Let's click the purchase. In a couple seconds, we will have one resource group and Vnet. Yep. Let's go to our resource group. Now we have a Vnet in here. As you can see, our address space is 40.0.0.0/16, and we have two subnet, subnet 1 and subnet 2. All configuration is ready. Thus we completed our first video about the Azure Virtual Network, so I hope it was a useful video for you guys. So see you in the next video.